So one thing that I think is something that we can pick up as a larger issue is the color contrast issues. I think we can do it right now, but we should talk a little more first. But things like the color contrast that was spotted in at least 3 spots, and every place that occurs it's an issue, and it's just 2 values. And I feel that I dumped that JIRA in the community. If someone with more aesthetic skills than I wanted to weigh in, they could have. I think we should pick some good contrasting colors. And if someone still feels those are poor choices, then that's their chance to object once there's values change. But just a couple little CSS color changes could address 3 issues right there. Yeah, you did bring up contrast many months ago. It's tricky when accessibility is a UX thing. But it's a particular UX thing, and it goes up and down all these areas. But yeah. Nice. That's a simple one to get globally. Reading back your question there, Sean. Other global decisions. The other one would be adopting the model that's ready and waiting for us with lessons of rendering text, skip text versus off-screen text, which is another global ticket or global issue that's in there somewhere. And that being that mostly Sakai, and how I would have done it, uses a display none CSS property on content that's not intended to be visually displayed. And in some cases, it looks like there's content that should be read by a screen reader that is also not being displayed, and because it's not displayed, it won't be read by a screen reader. If you want something to only be read by a screen reader, you're supposed to render it off the visual page, because as screen readers evolved, they knew better than to not read things that weren't displayed, because that's not the regular experience. But historically, that was a way of targeting a screen reader, which it won't pick up now, which all complies with the standards and is an obvious evolution, but it's easy to forget and get muddled up. So Lessons has a CSS class for hiding things from everyone, and also they have a class for rendering text off screen to just let someone using a screen reader know that this is what they're about to encounter. SSB, I think, pretty accurately spotted some spots where the intent was for text to only be for a screen reader, but because it was set to display none, no screen readers, only visual users would be able to read or perceive it. That's got to get sorted. It's probably as simple as just moving that class, copying that class, moving or copying one issue from Lessons up into the main CSS. And yeah, misuse, I think, is exactly right, Sean.
Just as an FYI, if I take this recording out of Big Blunt and put it on YouTube, which is what we usually do for meetings, we lose the text chat part, so it can be helpful to read it out loud, so it gets in the recording.
Nice. And cut and paste doesn't work that well. Maybe we should use Etherpad chat too, but this has all been challenging. I appreciate people accommodating me here. So Sean's flagging the misuse of the skip nav, and yeah, we do definitely need and confirm we do need to redefine skip and have and adopt an off-screen, I think, across all of Sakai, like Lessons has. And I think that so the strategic decision would be: do we redefine the current class to make it off-screen, or do we find a new off-screen class and try to get the things that are hidden or skipped to transition. Because there might be a valid case for hiding things is what I think and what Sean just typed into the chat window. We definitely want the two options that Sean suggested. It's what's the least change for us across Sakai, to redefine the current and adopt a new, or make a new and transition to that where needed. Yeah. So Sean says we need to evaluate current use cases. I think if we stick with the current skip nav and add an off-screen class, then that matches what lessons practice is now, and not that it hurts us to have one class duplicated twice. But then we could just use the same class name, and it would go across Sakai from there. Skimming that list there. For that parent JIRA. And it is SAC31549, which I'm going to paste into the chat. Add to our Etherpad. So that ensure screen reader specific content is rendered off screen rather than hidden or not displayed. That is the parent of 9 other issues. And so those are all what SSB spotted instances of using a skip class when what was intended was the screen reader. They suspected the intent was the screen reader was supposed to read that, but it wouldn't have read it because it was set to display none. And I think, as Sean was saying, that there might be valid cases for hiding things, and I suspect as much as well, which is what makes this tricky. So my just assumption, maybe you wanted to set something to display none, which I don't think you use a skip class for that. But you might have, because you wanted it in one case to not be displayed, but maybe when someone printed that page, you wanted that text to be displayed, which is a different CSS. Could be a different CSS profile. And so that would have been a valid use for that kind of displaying none, or set to display none, the text. So there are some valid uses of it, but I think mostly the intent was to communicate something to people using screen readers, and unfortunately not getting the message, so we got to fix this. So if let's just talk about these 2 issues. What would it take to fix those? Doing the inventory. 2 really simple CSS changes got committed, went in the trunk. Everything breaks or everything works great. We worked through appropriate QA process and then solved 10 issues right there. Is it that simple? I guess it's not quite that simple if we have to get those 9 instances to use a different class, actually.
Well, it doesn't, I mean, I'm not a programmer, so probably, a screen of salt, but it sounds like very doable.
Well, I think Matt Jones is our resident SAS expert. Sean says potentially that simple, but not likely. Matt Jones, our regular SAS expert. If we and me or a few of us just over maybe Slack picked replacement colors for the contrast issue, maybe he could get those into the SAS rendering and get that Jira.
Not even me. That's that was almost all S2U. The knowledge really doesn't leave them. I guess Sean did some work there, but I wouldn't know how to fix a lot of this stuff. Like the best solution for like this one or the other one.
Well, I think a lot of us know the CSS as created. It's that whole understanding the miracles that SAS is doing for us part.
Yeah.
So Sean says he's familiar with the color stuff in SAS. Plus, he spells color the right way. So that's 2 votes for Sean.
You mean the Canadian way?
The mother tongue way. Yes. So I won't read the comments loud anymore. So what we can I think Slack is a good spot to bang that out. And then we could get that put into master against that Jira, which is the master one, the parent Jira, so many nouns. 31617. And that'd be, again, quick win there. Another really simple to start, but not to apply, would be adopting lessons solution for off-screen rendering. So create that off-screen class, and thank you, Neil, for getting that one up there. So if we do a class for off-screen, if lessons totally attributed, they stole that from Drupal. If that went into, is it the portal class, the portal CSS file? That's then that's the infrastructure to solve it and all the sub issues. And yeah, so it uses the clip property in CSS, Sean is identifying, and asking if it's deprecated. I don't know. It's the nice thing about that being attributed to Drupal is, what's Drupal 8 doing? Drupal 8.
I do know somebody who has Drupal expertise I possibly could reach out to. So the question for the Drupal person is, what are they doing for rendering off-screen content that's not displayed?
Yeah, it's off-screen content that's intended for a screen reader and not to be displayed visually. But I bet just looking at the CSS for Drupal, I think version 8 is their current release. See if they're still doing that same class. And that would likely be, it's not confirmation if the clip property is deprecated or not, but it would be confirmation that it's applicable still. Because in lessons, the off-screen rendering is actually functional. And things work, web browsers are history of web browsers is things that work don't necessarily mean they're standards compliant. So I just took a quick look at Drupal.org and I can't find the off-screen class.
Yeah, and Sean has some additional comments in Big Blue Button.
Deprecated. The feature's been removed from the web standards, so some browsers may still support it. Is in the progress of being dropped. Do not use it in old or new projects, pages, or web apps. Using it may break at any time. All right, looking at that class then, clip properties are about the only thing affecting it. So if clip didn't work, it wouldn't work. The positioning isn't going to, the positioning being absolute isn't going to render it off screen by itself. And Sean, I think you got that from MozDev. That makes more sense. Sean's explaining that that's not doing off-screen at all. It's putting all sides of the object inside the same single pixel. Well, still, credit to Drupal. That was a good solution as long as it lasted. Just attaching that appears to be deprecated to the comments in that JIRA.
Matt, Claire, are you still there? It looks like you're not on Big Blue Button anymore.
I am not on the big blue button, but I'm still on the phone.
Okay, let me know if there's particular things you want me to bring up to display.
Thanks.
And I'll read out Sean's comments to you when you're ready, because he's still doing the chat thing.
Just got back in, but we may have to read them out for the record.
Sure. So we already talked about that it has no width or height on the clip, and that's what was hiding it. And he mentioned that the deprecated sentence was from the Mozilla, developer.mozilla.org, and it says he has a link here for css-tricks.com, css-tricks.com. They suggest clip path, but the browser support has limited support. So that doesn't seem ideal.
I think I found it on Brock University's Drupal instance, that off-screen class, but I'm having trouble finding it quickly and haphazardly on the Drupal.org example.
Is this something that SSB Bart can advise us on?
Yeah, I think so. certainly worth an inquiry. And I think we should frame it up as we were going to go with this. We are using it. You didn't tell us not to in this one instance, but it's deprecated. What do we do? It seems like a pretty good question to ask. All right. Where's that Etherpad?
It looks like Karen dropped off and is back on now. Welcome back, Karen. Not sure how long you were off for, but how much you missed. But we were just talking about the clip property and maybe asking SSB BART, since clip is deprecated, if there's some other best practice for having off-screen content. And I'm still learning and puzzled, but so the reason for the off-screen content is because you do want the screen readers to pick it up, but you don't want it to impact anything that's on screen?
Yes, because in a lot of the examples in Sakai, it's things like what follows are controls to change this pagination. You can view up to 200 records per page or something like that. So something that's visually obvious but is possibly difficult to perceive if you can't see the page and you're trying to navigate with a screen reader.
Okay.
It's an opportunity to say, hey, person using a screen reader, I'm flagging this for you in a way I know you'll get the information. And it's an example of some good accessibility work done in these tools in Sakai. And the bad news is, apparently a lot of people with screen readers didn't know it was there because we're using the wrong CSS technique.
I'm still puzzled why hidden or not displayed doesn't work. Like, that would be logical. That's the first thing that I would come up with. And I don't want to take a lot of time, but I just, for my own edification, it's like, well, if it's hidden, then, you know.
I think it came down to the screen readers. Jaws specifically took a standards-based approach. That a link to the invisible content thing from WebAIM. That was Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
There.
Let me take a look at that.
The screen readers took a literalist approach as things went on, as the web evolved, and if the text was not to be displayed, or something other than text was not to be displayed, it wasn't read.
Okay. I see. So it was not to be displayed. It wasn't read. Therefore, that also wouldn't be picked up with the screen reader. Okay, that makes sense. It's just hard to put your head around the whole thing. It would seem like there would be. I mean, it's kind of surprising to me that by this point in time there isn't an explicit something, for HTML that would be a label that says this is for the screen reader and that's what it's for. That you have to go through all this workaround just seems really odd that they wouldn't have some basic accessibility standards.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I know that it was definitely something that evolved and started with display none working. That's the reason I thought that approach was confirmed. It's in the WebAIM article. That approach initially worked like years ago, but I think what likely was happening was JAWS and other screen readers took a literalist approach, and there are probably other websites where display.none being read meant that a whole bunch of pre-cached content suddenly was being read before you could even read this web page on a website that had never considered accessibility.
Well, it's interesting. I think I understand a little bit better. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's a example from WebAIM. And that's definitely positioning it off screen, not isolating it inside. Yeah, Sean's already broken it down.
Right, he writes screen reader skip font size 0, or width 0, or height 0. or display none, then the screen readers just skip it and you don't get it at all. So you can't use those techniques for hiding stuff.
Yeah.
And yet still making them accessible to screen readers.
So I think let's go with the WebAIM hidden example then. They're waiting for us all along. And it's a question of, do we call it hidden or off-screen? And if I send a message to Chuck Hendrick and say, what's better for you, could that be the way to decide it, since they've already got an existing practice? And then, since it's a new thing for the rest of Sakai, if we go with .hidden, we've not only got one that won't collide with lessons, assuming that's what's desired. It directly tracks back to the example from WebAIM, which is a really simple thing for the next person to understand. Yeah, and then we wouldn't be using off-screen, and then we wouldn't be mucking with people that are already, well, lessons, I think, you're only using off-screen.
And, okay, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Neil.
So again, just trying to get my head wrapped around this. So suggesting hidden to be hidden for everyone, and when it says everyone, I thought the idea was that hidden would still be read by screen readers. So that's not what hidden is. The off screen is the one that is for the screen readers.
I'm just talking about namespace.
Oh, okay. Okay, just the namespace. All right.
So,
in other words, what you call it in the CSS, not the actual, HTML code stuff.
You got it, and it was confusing to Sean too, and he just caught up too. So thank you for helping.
All right.
Sean says, let's determine the technique first and then name it to make sense.
Yeah, and I would just have one suggestion, but this is just me, and that might be dumb, and I'm not a programmer, I'm not programming Sakai, so it should be taken, again, not very solidly, but I'm curious of naming it a little bit different so that people don't confuse the tag, the HTML tag, with the namespace, because that would be such an easy thing to do and get people so confused. I don't know.
Well, again, in the SAS world, it's hard to it's one more abstraction to figure out. But Sean's suggesting let's determine the technique first and then name it to make sense, so that future Sakai dev generations can understand it literally, not historically. That makes sense. I'm just thinking that if we call it hidden and a website with good longevity already has the example right there, and we can put a CSS comment in, then future Sakai devs can follow up right there.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you're going on the right track. I mean, I'd still sort of vote for taking back the recommendation back to SSB BART, since I think we've paid for this, their expertise, right, and saying this is what our approach is, or after we're talking with the Sakai devs, like Sean is suggesting, I think, and kind of confirming it with them, and just saying, hey, you're the experts. Is this the right way to go?
Yeah, I agree. And I'll include that link and say this is the direction we're thinking we should go in, and they can both comment based on their experience and what we're considering too.
Cool. Yeah. And like you said, it sounds like that takes care of about 10 issues once we figure that out, and that's 20% of the issues. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good start.
Yeah, that still needs those instances to be to change classes.
Yep.
But that's simple work. Just who's going to do it, but still simple work.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can pick some better colors on the CSS contrast, which again could be a quick, big collection of wins. And then there's the other ones. There's some inappropriate ARIA roles and a lot of form issues, like basically missing labels, and then keyboard accessibility, and that's and some image alt tags missing, which are low-hanging fruit again.
And Sean writes that there might be a bit more to it than that. I think he was talking about the other issue of the hidden issue, depending on the technique and how it affects neighboring elements. So there might be more to it than just the class naming. I think he's saying.
Yeah, and that's a good point. But I think it starts with getting the right class available, so that can be figured out.
Yeah, so Sean brings up another good point, really good point, actually. We discussed making a style guide for Morpheus, and have you ever thought about an accessibility guide for Sakai devs, Matt? And actually, that was one of the things that came up on the core team call, I think, was suggestion if there was some way we could come up with an accessibility guide was one thing. And another thing that I've been hearing from devs, it's tangential but related. I talked to Dr. Chuck a little bit and Earl a little bit. I noticed there's more stuff going by in the chat. But yeah, I mean, if we could figure out ways to engage with the QA community, which I'm starting to try and do, and get people used to maybe using some of those tools we've talked about, I think, at least some of the simpler tools, it might help push back on the devs until they get used to kind of the patterns of what they need to do to make good new code accessible. So I think to me, this could be a real coordinated effort, but I see there's also, let's see, you guys are talking on the chat here, sorry. So go ahead, Matt. I lost the thread about what you're talking on the chat there. So.
Sure. So Sean brought up the whole style guide, which is a good question, and he also added in there how to create accessible content with each Java framework. I'll come back to that. They should. And I threw in there WCAG20y question mark and then added on there. It is more complicated than that, but in which ways? And Sean makes a good point, but element structure and the need ARIA properties. ARIA is a good point. There's probably a simple subset of ARIA we could point towards for the kinds of things that happen in Sakai that would make that easier for people to approach. And as far as Java frameworks, I know it feels like, as someone that's only dealing with the HTML side, that the new frameworks, the modern frameworks are fine. The issues are the legacy ones. And if we could get rid of the legacy ones, it would solve all kinds of issues, but it's not that simple. SSB would say WCAG20y, and they have said stuff like that as far as rubrics. It was a question that Sean asked. Yeah, older Java frameworks generally love their markup themselves, and I think the real example of that is Samigo. The forms are all bad in there, and they're uniformly bad. So it probably seems like a framework issue, or lack thereof. We're getting close to the top of the hour and the end of Despicable Me 2 is when I have to go parent again. So I think we've got some good plans for those two parent years on color contrast and the off-screen. I'm going to on the color contrast. let's just throw some in the Apereo Accessibility Slack channel and go from there on the, because we can compute those readily. The skip nav, the off-screen rendering, the display none issue. I'm going right back to SSB for recommendations on that. Quick, like, this is what we're looking at, and we're basing on this, and we're worried about clip. And yeah, and after that, what do we do about the rest? I do think, and Neil's commenting that look at the funds and prioritize and maybe save the funds for the hard fixes. I certainly agree. I feel like we're up against moral hazard and time here. So do we wait for volunteers, or the volunteers wait till they get paid and then the time runs out? So what makes that more palatable is people are good people. So we've got that to rely upon. But in between there, it's hard to figure out exactly what to do, which is why I'm wondering if it would help to take the remaining 48 or so, 45, whatever we didn't talk about today, and are there some that would make a good collection of things for someone to take on, something to get a estimate on. John's saying it's not the best time of year, which is a good point. Although November can be a good time to wrapping it up, and then we could test in December. But I agree, it's a tough time of year. So if we can figure out like what's a unit of work amongst these issues, I think it might help people jump on board.
Yeah, I think we need to get people on board. So if we, are getting people for October, November, if we, are getting them to think about it now, maybe then they'll think about putting that time aside. I know that the folks in Spain are mostly on vacation still, so we can't reach out to them to see if they have bandwidth to do any of this work, because, with their CSS and SAS expertise, there might be some things they can do pretty quickly. So definitely we're checking with them when they're back, which I hopefully, I think some of them may be gone the whole month of August or something. So,
my understanding of how it works in Europe.
Yeah, so we might have to wait a few weeks to find out if that's something that they would be, have the time and interest to work on. I'm sure they'd be willing to at least engage in discussing it. And you mentioned that there were some existing commitments that you were going to double check on, Matt, right? That there may still be some, Oxford or Longsight might still be willing to do some stuff. So, and then we can start, kind of doing the farm thing and raising money, and who knows where we might get stuff from. It does help to have the more we have information about what we need. I think the more likely we are to get get the help we need.
Yeah, and I think, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it would make sense to get some of the issues related. So I think if, I don't have a quick summary, if there's 8 Jira issues, or 8 Samigo issues, I think is it better to say we've got 8 Samigo issues, or we are looking for some people or someone to do work on Samigo?
I'm not sure I understand the distinction.
So, in playing it out, would it be fine to have 8 people working on 8 Samigo things, or would we be better off trying to get one entity to work on all the Samigo work?
Well, the reality with Samigo, and this would be one Matt and Sean could probably speak better than I could, but my perception is with the Samigo one, there's only a handful of people who really have the expertise to go in there and do it well. So I don't know if that will be, that might be where we put some of the money. I don't know. And Sean says, I don't think either will be enticing.
Yeah.
So
that's my thought too. But I am using Samigo as a handy example.
It's the hardest, right? It's probably the hardest example of all of things. Yeah.
There's a couple keyboard focus areas. Would it be worth? Do you think we should be looking for help for someone who can handle keyboard focus in ARIA, or someone who, let's say, 5 people who can do it in 5 separate tools?
I don't know, because I don't know what the level of expertise or comfort is with with these concepts in the community, and who has the knowledge, the skill, the time, all those great factors. So I don't know personally, but I think it's very good questions. Sean's response is
Yeah, and I don't want it to be the perfect to be the enemy of the good here, but I think it needs a little thought.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, sending something to either, I don't know if you have time to go on a Sakai core team call, or maybe even better, sending something to the dev list or the Sakai core team list and ask some of these questions, get people thinking. I think combined with that sense of, hey, if we want to get WCAG2 certified, this is what we need to make happen. I think we'll mobilize the community. I really do. I really think that there's a lot of institutions that really, that's my hope. I don't know for sure. I don't have hard facts, but I think everybody wants this. So anybody who has any ability to help, I think they might. So.
Yeah, I agree. I can't do anything real time for the next 2 weeks, but I can send out messages. And again, something to SkyDev seems like a good idea. I should just get in the habit of doing that weekly, I think, at the moment.
So it sounds like Sean's, he's busy right now, but he might be able to help, which is really awesome.
That's great, Sean. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your whatever work you can do, and the clarity you bring is really useful as well. So we talked about what I'm going to do about clarity or checking out some issues. If anyone has any ideas in the next 2 weeks of ways I can just do simple emails to SACDev, because I'm mostly on a European style vacation at the moment myself, I'm fine with that. I do think while looking for volunteers, presentation counts for a lot of an easy place to start, or an understandable place to start, if not easy. And then once we shake out our volunteers, and then I think that's when what remains the tricky stuff and where we use our funds.
Well, I'll coordinate with you with, like I said, if there's things you want me to communicate out, we can coordinate that. Or if I'm going to send a message out, I can ping you first and say, this is what it looks like, or whatever. We'll just keep coordinated so we can get the message out to the community while you're working on the specifics to get these, fixes going.
Yeah, that sounds good enough for now. I think getting the urgency communicated in these communications is an important thing.
Okay. I'm happy to send something out, soon, and just let people know where we're at. And like I said, we could draft something up, or you could draft something up, and I could send it to all the lists. And I've already, like I said, I mentioned it on the QA call, but I didn't have the specifics, or I didn't have it in my brain, the specifics of the deadline. And I mentioned it on the core team call, but with the same caveat. So I've already been trying to get people to start thinking about it, but I think adding the timetable is really important.
True, and I'm being recorded right now, but I think it's fine. Some have been worried about saying that we're 75% compliant. I don't think that's that much of an issue, especially when we're in the progress of solving it. But that's been a concern in other circumstances before.
Interesting.
But yeah, like I said, this close to solving it, I don't think it's too much of a concern to make that public knowledge. And hey, I just spoke it into the YouTube.
Right.
All right. That sounds good for now.
Okay, well, thanks, Matt.
Well, thank you, everyone, for bearing with me in my connectivity issues.
And Sean has a final comment there. I think we'll want to define the technique to solve some of these things so we can separate working on the solution versus working on Sakai.
Want to give us a few more words in that, Sean? Is there like an audience you're thinking of there? Sort of makes sense, but I think yeah, because your comment working on the solution versus working on Sakai are synonymous in most cases, but probably significantly distinct in others.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. Yeah, if we could do that.
Yeah, I agree. And is that best presented in here's the problem, here's the solution, there's the JIRA, or here's the JIRA, it's got some more details than it has right now?
So do we need like a Confluence page or a GitHub page or something where this can start putting some of those techniques?
Yeah, I think we must, because Chuck Hendrick on the whole render off screen put in the comments like, oh, WebAIM's got an article. And I'm thinking like, yeah, it's in the last paragraph of the description. But that's good feedback that you don't want to get all the way down to the last paragraph of a long description. We should be presenting this stuff in ways that make more sense sooner. So, yeah, if it was Confluence, then we could present it in a way that relates directly back to JIRA's. If it was GitHub, it would be new and sexy.
I think for now, Jira, I mean, Confluence makes sense to me. I like that idea of like you could, have a section. Here's the kinds of fixes, and here's some Jiras that relate to that fix, and because they have such a good integration between the two. And then also when you're in the Jira, it automatically picks up the Confluence page. So if you're in the Jira looking, you'd go back and you'd see the page, with that suggestion. So I think we might eventually go to GitHub completely for lots of documentation stuff. But I think this seems like a really good job for Confluence and Jira together. Dynamic duo.
I'm going to do that then, because that can build on some of the notes I already have, and that can make some more content going forward in Confluence. And then I can have sentences that say, these following issues are big problems, and then right beside it says solve, resolve, resolved, and it'd be up to the minute.
Right. Absolutely. That's right.
I won't have to worry about being off there. And Sean could start an accessibility guide. Yay! Yeah, that'd be good. As I was saying in the comments, and prodding you on, it's a developer perspective on, especially Sakai developer perspective on what of the huge list of stuff in WCAG 2 is the thing that needs to be understood to move forwards versus the whole thing would help. All right. Okay, I'm going to wrap up then. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye again. Let me stop recording now.